Good morning. This is Carl Dakin, and this is my successful funding show. We are once again having all the fun of working with new and different audiovisual challenges and internet connection issues so that my guest, Eric Hanson, can join us. He is currently working through that this morning, but it's a brand new challenge. And so we're coming up with a brand new solution in order to help us get him on the show, and we can get to today's topic of getting to yes. But while he's working on that, I'm going to fill up this otherwise dead time with a little bit of background. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carl Dakin. I provide services in coaching people on how to raise capital. Most of my work is centered on small businesses, some startups, some who are scaling, and also work with communities who are trying to raise money for multiple projects at the same time, which makes it a little bit more complicated, actually, a lot more complicated in putting together all the pieces and figuring out actually multiple capital sources to match with that. So this show, the Successful Funding Show, this is in its 20 something week. And every week we get together on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m. Denver time, where I'm located. And I have a guest, and we talk about some of the issues, questions, and challenges of raising funding. Um, this is a live stream presentation on LinkedIn. We dual broadcast to Facebook and YouTube, and the audience has an opportunity to participate in the show by adding comments or asking questions, and we invite everybody to do that. The show is intended to be for our audience, and myself and my guests are here to share information that we have learned or know about through our experiences in raising funding. And we hope that my guest this morning will be able to make it on. For whatever reason, he was taken through a identification process that we never had to use before. And as usual, it's a problem that pops up at the last second. So we will find ourselves with a box of chocolates and figure out just exactly what we're trying to do. Um, if he can't join us, it may be possible to recruit somebody else to come onto the show. I see Don is in the audience this morning. Welcome, Don. As I've been describing, my guest this morning, upon using the guest link to appear in the Restream studio, was given a CAPTCHA requirement to fill out before he could enter the studio. And so we're trying to figure out how to solve that, answer that, or work around it in some fashion. If you're available to join us on the show, I'll send you a guest link, and we can have a three-way group. But I know Don has a show coming up at 9 o'clock, top of the hour. He is going to be working with Beverly Glazier, who is a good friend, an associate of all of ours, who puts on her own show talking about different things that people encounter who are women. And they're planning a very fun and entertaining show for today. So as soon as I get off here, I'll be signing into that program to be in the audience there. Um, so it looks like we're continuing to go forward. So I'm just going to work through today's topic and see if Eric is successful in getting through, and also be monitoring communications to see what might also be going on where he's trying to get a hold of me while we're online. Um, so today's topic was getting to yes. Everyone out there who works to raise funding wants to get to a point where they're talking face to face with an investor, maybe online, maybe they're working through a crowdfunding platform. But there is a point in this process where all work has been done, and the reaction, the response is the investor says, yes, I'm going to write a check. I'm going to make my resources available. And in that regard, Eric is now here. And
little difficulty there. Sorry, Carl.
no, this is all good. So Don, I was talking with Don via the chat room about coming on in case you could not be rescued from your limbo that you're in. So Don, I'm gonna wave you off. I'm gonna let you prepare for your show at 9 o'clock, and Eric and I will continue forward with this program. And as Eric, I was just describing that it's every entrepreneur's dream to reach a point where the entrepreneur says yes. This is typically the result of long work, great preparation, sorting and sifting through countless investor candidates who ultimately say no, and finding that one or that group or that large crowd that says, hey, yes, we're interested in investing. So, with that, what I'd like to do is introduce my guest, Eric Hanson. Eric's been on the show before, and he, like myself, has worn all the hats. He's invested, he's raised money, he's put deals together, he's acted as a mentor, advisor, director, you name it. He's done all those things. And generally, what the outcome of that is Eric becomes an old person, like myself. Uh, um, and so the net of that is that Eric has his vision, his perspective in working with so many different deals. And Eric and I were on the phone earlier this week looking at yet another new project that has come forward in which we're interested. And we were going through a lot of the same questions that an investor would ask, which has to do with, is this a real deal? Are there problems? What will cause the deal to blow up? Is there anything we can do about that? Should we respond to this opportunity or should we walk away? And so, in that regard, Eric is going to, I'm going to ask Eric to provide a little bit of background on himself more than my introduction. And to our question today, uh, getting to yes, what is it that will flip investor over? What will trigger them to nod their head, get out their checkbook? These are all things that we're interested in learning and sharing with the audience today. So again, I reach out to the audience. If you have questions, comments, please join us. And we'll see what we can do to react and respond to your questions. So, Eric, good morning.
Good morning. So I'm Eric Hanson, and as Carl aptly put it, I'm an old fart now. And yes, I've been around the block once or twice. I've owned and operated several independent businesses, everything from investment firm to where we did options trading to telecom company to heavy industry. So I've kind of been around the block, seen a lot of stuff, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fabulous career. So hopefully that helps, Carl.
Yeah, so the investors, I call them investor candidates until they write a check, and then I elevate or upgrade them to investors once they've changed their status and went from tire kickers to funders. And in that regard, I take the position that every investor is unique. As much as it seems like we try to put them all in one box, in one group to treat them like a commodity, they're not. And so there are things that a entrepreneur, a small business, a community can do to make themselves get to that point where they get the nod, they get the yes decision. So starting with that, Eric, what do you think is the common element that you see in most investors that's going to cause them to say, yes, this is okay, let's get going.
So let me back up just a little bit. The number one thing is if you are trying to raise money for a green energy product, you have to go find the investors that are even interested in that investment. Because if you're going to a venture capitalist company, let's say, and they don't do green energy, you're wasting their time and your own time. More importantly, your own time. So first do some research of who does what and why. The big question is, why do they respond? And that's not hard research now with the internet the way it is and Google search. So find out the answers first, then go to them. Then be prepared that and Carl, as you put it, they see so many deals, and most of the deals have fundamental problems. So make sure, as we were talking the other day, the foundation of your deal is absolutely solid. What do I mean by that? So we were talking about manufacturing the other day. If your deal doesn't have solid manufacturing capability and you haven't come up with a solution to that, your deal's done. It's an absolute non-starter. So, but if it is solid and your investor candidate can look at it, touch it, feel it, see it, you're going to get at least the nod to the next part of inspection. So you start looking at the real basics of what's going on. Then you go to the next thing. Does it have intellectual property? It doesn't necessarily have to have intellectual property. It still can be a really good deal. But if it does, that paperwork has to be correct. If it's very poorly done, your investor candidate's going to say, no, these guys didn't put in the effort, right? So, and that's the other that goes into the next kind of thing. So, if you don't have skin in the game and you aren't putting in sizable effort, it's a no. It's an immediate no. Nobody cares about your project. So, if you remember those kinds of things, then you can kind of progress on through, because these guys are busy. And with all luck, you're very busy. So be prepared, be willing to discuss the good sides, but understand they are going to look for any possible reason to put you in the circular file on the floor. That's their job. So does that help, Carl?
Yeah, it's one of the tough parts here in advising people on raising funding is I have my list of things that are common standard things that you need to do to be ready to make a pitch, to be ready to present to an investor candidate. And at the same time, though, if we go to the other side of the equation, we go and stand in the investor's shoes, then at that point, they have their list of what they're looking for. And as I mentioned earlier, I can treat and consider each investor candidate to be unique. Even if they've invested in an environmental project before, and this is what their stated interest is going to be, they still are going to look at you and consider you as an environmental company. How do you compare with the other 10, 20, 100 different opportunities that they have to invest in? And as Eric just described, um, it's kind of a inverted, almost twisted way of looking at things, but you're saying, I don't have time to look at 100 deals. I can't invest in 100 deals. You may have put blood, sweat, and tears into your project, into your pitch, into everything you're doing, which is good for you, give you kudos, give you, all the gold stars. But the investor candidate, frankly, doesn't care from the standpoint that they have to make a decision. They're sitting there in their office with all kinds of things coming at them from all directions on opportunities to invest, and they get to pick one. Okay, they're not going to pick necessarily two, three, four, five, or six, or the best, five out of the top 100. They're looking for the one decision they're going to make today, and because of that, if there's anything off, anything that they don't like, anything that causes them to be uncomfortable or dislike one of the people making the presentation, or it just could be the wrong time of day. Uh, they're
Yes.
they're they're going they are going to make a decision because they've in fact committed themselves to move forward, make a decision, and when they look at your particular deal, if it's not perfect or as close to perfect or clearly stands out amongst all the other people who are clamoring for their money, they're going to kick you loose. And in some ways, it may not be your fault, may not be anything you can do in making your pitch. You may have done all you can do. It may have been perfect. As we saw in the Olympics here, and I'm using a lot of Olympic analogies here. Some of these people prepared for decades to be in the Olympics, and they did not get a gold medal, okay? Because according to the rules of the Olympics, there's only one who's going to get the gold medal in a particular competition. And this is the same way with investor decisions. On any given day, the investor is likely to make no more than one decision. They're going to pick one deal. And on that particular day, if it turns out everybody else in the competition is almost or better than you, you've got to win that battle. You've got to be better than everything else because the investor candidate is looking for the best. They're cherry picking. They're going to get one deal. They're going to give them the money. Everybody else is in second place. Yeah, they don't hand out bronze medals or silver medals in the fundraising competition. So it's a kind of a winner takes all. And so the need to meet that individual investor candidate's perfection scale has to be as good as you can be on that day, and you still could lose out.
So I think the number one and first thing for you to get a yes, the very first thing you have to do is you have to treat it as a job interview. And if you're not going to treat it as a job interview, you will never get past the very first nod for yes. And I'll give you an example of this. So, and I'm going to beat up on a local school, okay, a little bit. So, Colorado School of Mines, internationally known, great reputation, great students, on and on and on. And I see the students when they graduate, they expect to get a job. And all of a sudden, they don't get a job. They may be the top of their class, but they came in with the expectation, I graduated from Colorado School of Mines. I am better than anybody else. So I told this young man the other day, I said, okay, so you're graduating, good grades. You don't have a whole lot of outside activities. You don't have, and you want a job with a very specific company. Well, that's kind of like the investor, right? You want money from someone very specific. I said, what are you doing to get that money? What are you doing to get that job? And the answer was, well, I graduated School of Mines. And I said, well, what about the guys who graduated MIT, Georgia Tech? I said, you're graduating at a time when there's 100,000 other highly qualified engineers who have better resumes than you. how are you going to differentiate yourself for that one job? And getting an investor is exactly the same. You can't just assume because you are great, you're brilliant, and you have some sort of a resume that they're going to like you. You have to earn it. And that's a hard concept for people to get around, because pride of authorship is really, when you're a little entrepreneur, your pride of authorship is way out here. You you think you've got the world by the tail, and you're just one of thousands.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct that all too often the entrepreneur, the small business enters into the pitch with a I need money, and that's the only topic on the table. And
Right.
that's a bad way to start a conversation where you say, we're going to talk about me, and then we're going to talk about me some more, and then we're going to talk about me some more. And we never ever enter into this conversation, into the components of the conversation, the investor's needs, why they're there, things like that. I really like the comparison with the interview, because if you walk into the interview and go, hey, look, I have a diploma. Well, so do a lot of other people. Hey, I'm brilliant, so are a lot of other people, and you're not getting across to the person, I'm here to make your business better. As an employee, I'm going to try to help you, the business. I'm going to try to help my coworkers. I'm going to try to help you in your career path within the business. I'm here to help. And here's how I think I can help. And if you start with the investor as the center of the conversation, and you are sincere in your intent to help them, and you've prepared for this conversation by trying to figure out how you can help them best, and you're able to discuss that and illustrate that, then what you've done, as I call it in negotiation, I've moved from people on two sides of the table to where they're both on the same side of the table. Because now the person's going, oh, okay, he's not trying to take something from me. He's not trying to, get a paycheck. That isn't his primary focus. His focus is to help me, the investor, achieve my goals, whatever my goals happen to be. And so I think that it's very important to get to yes, that the person seeking money at the very first contact with an investor candidate, and everywhere along the path, the process of making the pitch, has to keep the conversation focused on the investor. And if they can't do that, if they ever backslide, if they ever start talking about who they are, if they ever indicate that they have a right or entitlement to something that they have, me, it's one of the things that I get turned off in a hurry. I mean, like instantaneously, when I hear somebody go, well, I've got this new idea, and so I should be making $100 million next year. And I start going, well, you just informed me that it's all about you. You don't understand what you're talking about, and therefore you've lost credibility across the board, and you're out. So you can't get to yes talking about yourself unless you're talking about how you are going to help the investor candidate achieve their goals. That's your clue, Eric. You can talk now.
I'm back on stage. I appreciate that. So we kind of went over the very first thing to getting a yes. The second thing to getting a yes, for me, it's pretty simple. And you just touched on it. And that's that whole idea of getting them comfortable with you and the possible relationship. So it's kind of like speed dating, right? So I mean, it kind of is. It's kind of like speed dating. So you're trying to figure out, the investor's trying to figure out if you're compatible. You need to figure out if they're compatible. And And here's where I think a lot of people looking for money, they don't catch the sign. So if you start seeing that they're not compatible, stop the conversation and ask a really super simple question. You go, and be honest with them. Say, we're not gelling. It ain't working between us. But could you do, because they will give you an answer and they will give you a referral. You look at them and say, this isn't your cup of tea, I'm getting it. Who do you know who I could talk to that maybe my program fits better? And it's amazing. They will go back to you and say, I know Joe down the street, and this looks more like his kind of a deal. And I think people forget to ask for help.
I think that the relationship element is lost all too often. Again, I've seen entrepreneurs come in and their whole attitude, as soon as you write me a check, I'm never going to talk to you again unless I write you a check back. And quite frankly, it's other people's money, so that's not high on my concern list. I just want your money today so I can go do what I want to do today, and our relationship is threadbare. It's limited only to you writing a check to me, and then whatever minimum regulatory response I have to make to report or let you know what's going on. And they don't think beyond the check to the relationship with the investor candidate. They're not looking at everything else that that investor candidate can bring to the table, and so when they're talking to them, it keeps sounding like, as soon as you give me a check, I'm out of your office. And that is not something that investors look for. To get to yes, I think that the investor has to like the person. I mean, I've seen people make investments in people they don't like, but it's very rare, actually. There is no deal that is so cool, so hot, so over the top that an investor candidate can't walk away and going, yeah, that's really cool tech, but he's an ass, or he's totally all over himself. And I saw a pitch actually a couple of weeks ago. Two guys stood up and were talking about how good they were, and I was looking at their outfits and going, wow, did they go down to a designer studio and buy those suits and get their hair styled. And I was, just looking at all these things that were, you know, turning me off because I'm like, these guys are so slick. They have spent so much time in preparation to tell a story in a particular fashion that I would go, yeah, I'd be afraid to let them into an entrepreneur setting because I don't think they could handle it. I think that, they don't have the toughness, the merit, and so forth. And so getting a yes is one of, relationship. I like the people. I trust this person, meaning that they come across as genuine. I believe that they're going to do everything they can do to protect my investment to move the business forward. I would be happy to have them over, for hot dogs and burgers on the grill, or I'd be happy to work with them in any other business setting because they handle themselves, they know themselves, they convey a sense of capability and a willingness to do the heavy lifting. They're not going to run away at the first thing that they encounter that's not the way they had hoped it was going to be. And all these things amount to character of the person matching with the character of the investor. And again, as we described it, you're in the meeting, you're having your first conversation, and the person across the table from you just doesn't match up with you. You go, yeah, they might be cool if they're doing a phone app, to a millennial audience with flip a business in and out, or they're looking to merge their company into somebody else 3 weeks down the road for $1 gazillion. That's not my cup of tea. That doesn't match with me, my style, my thinking, my beliefs, anything that go into that. And so therefore, no match and no yes.
So, Carl, you bring up a really important point, and it's so overlooked. And I know you've seen it, and everybody who's been in business has seen it. So you talk about your appearance. If you if you don't wear a suit well, and there are people who do not, don't wear a suit. Don't do it. What the hell are you thinking? So, you have to keep your appearance exactly like you're talking about, genuine. And if it's not genuine, they, it pops out right away and people see it. And, you know, and if the guy across the investor candidate, right? Let's say it's me. Well, there's certain expectations I have. Um, and it's just me, particular to me. If the guy can't wear a suit well, I'm not interested. Okay. But that's just me. But, and that's just because of my upbringing and all of that and my years in business where you wore a suit. You wore a suit and tie, and that's what you did, you know? And so when I see someone come talk to me and they can't wear a suit well, it tells me that the impression to me is you are not well put together, which means that your business idea probably isn't well put together. And I know that's sort of a strict rule that anymore doesn't apply a lot of times. But the point is, you have to be comfortable in your shoes when you walk into somebody, and don't make yourself to be something you're not, like the guys you were talking about. They obviously thought that being slick was going to make it work, but they probably weren't in real life slick. So the impression was fake, fake, fake. So
Well, actually, my impression was this is the way they were in real life, which is part of what turned me off. But you raise an important point because if somebody comes in and makes a pitch to me, and I think I get one or two a day, so I've got a large choice to look through. But I don't care about the suit. I was brought up, in an era when a lot of companies, a lot of places, and even today, a suit and tie, and actually not just a suit and tie, but the tie and the color of the tie
right,
and the knot on the tie all have to be in a particular place. And part of the reason why it's not, and I point this out, is that Eric says it's a requirement for him, it's not for me. And it
right.
isn't that we won't judge every other thing in this interview the same, but for the wear whatever dress you're in, I don't care. I work with a lot of inventors, startups. I've walked through garages that were knee deep in parts for things I didn't understand. I've gone places where I should have had a hard hat to go look at a brand new technology. And I'm used to being, as I call it, in the trenches, in the field, working with people whose hands are dirty in order to show off whatever it is they're working with. And a coat and tie is not only wrong; it's out of place. It might even be dangerous to the work environment. You should never wear a tie near a moving lathe or other types of moving stuff. So the point is that all investors are different. They all have their preferences, and as we mentioned earlier, you need to be prepped for the conversation. So if you're going to be pitching to Eric, you should wear a coat and tie. If you're going to pitch to
But
me,
only if that's your personality.
well, I agree.
If
It's
it's
got to
not
be
your
genuine.
personality,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's gotta be genuine, but, if you're coming in to pitch to me and you're an inventor, I actually might look for a lab coat, or I might look for, safety gear, some goggles dangling out of your pocket, something that indicates that you're in that world and doing that thing. And so you have to be genuine. You have to fit the situation, meaning that you want to present yourselves in the most genuine fashion possible because you are proposing a relationship. It is not a transaction. It's not here today, gone tomorrow. When you take that money, you will have an ongoing relationship with your investor from the day they write the check to the day you give them their money back. And that may take years for that to occur. And so you want that capability of working together for a common outcome that benefits both of you during this relationship. So when the person's looking at you, who's the investor, to get to yes, my first thought is, can I work with this person? You know, are they workable? Do they understand what they're doing, but do they understand who I am? Are they respecting me? Are they thinking about me? Am I part of the overall design of this business where I'm playing a part, even if it's only writing a check, but are they considering everything else I can bring to the table? If they come in with a very narrow mindset of getting a check and disappearing, they're out. It's not even going to be a thing. And this whole conversation that I'm talking about to get to yes, maybe four, five, six, seven, 8 meetings, demonstrations,
Right.
presentations, get-togethers. It's not, oh, hi, we got together for lunch. Let me write you a check. It doesn't work that way. So getting to yes is a process. It's a building block. It's providing information. It's communicating. It's demonstrating your capabilities. And when you get to that point, you pretty much have checked all the boxes. You've answered all the questions. You demonstrated that you're a fit. And then with a little bit of luck, you're the best choice of the day for that person to get behind. So Don has thrown in another comment. Genuine can go a long way. Thanks, Eric and Carl. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I've seen so many, I'll call it videos, books, so forth on how to make a pitch. And they come across like you need to do a choreographed song and dance. You have to, you know, walk through this in a particular fashion. And the first time you meet someone, you are trying to capture their interest. Your goal is to get a second meeting. You're not getting a check in the first meeting. You're just trying to get them to go, out of all these people, out of this cattle call of potential investments, I'd like you, and you to set up a second meeting so I can get to know you and we can dive into due diligence better. In your first one, you want to stand out, but you want to stand out in a way that manifests your business, not your entertainment skills, not your ability to create a slide deck, not your ability to tag team with one of the other members, you know, in your team of moving in and out of your presentation. And yet, this is the, I'll say, crap that is currently being taught in the schools, in on the media. You see it on different TV shows, which will go unnamed because I dislike them. But the point being is, this isn't the real world. You're not going to walk into a major company or a potential business partner and say, hey, hold on, I'm going to put on a slide deck and let me get the music on. And we need to clear the room so I can move in and out of my dance steps while I'm making my pitch. You know, I would just probably just fold over laughing if I saw somebody try to do that. But that's how they tell you to do a pitch competition. And unfortunately, they have judges and scorecards that back this up. So I'm just saying that that's not genuine. That doesn't get the job done. That does make you stand out. It just means that you might have a future in entertainment, not in running a small business. So, Eric, what else is on your thought process? What would get a person to yes that they might not be thinking of, or they're ignoring, or they forgot to tell them in that short course they took on making pitches at the local accelerator that has nothing to do with reality.
So, we've kind of gone over a couple of things. You got to be genuine. You have to, you need to be able to ask questions, and you need to ask intelligent questions. So if I'm going into Carl and I'm going to pitch you something, I want to know, I want to engage you. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to get you engaged in a real conversation. And mostly, I want it to not be in my pitch, but everything around the pitch, if that makes sense. So what you're doing is you're saying, I want your money. I'm going to do all these things. That's been in your pitch. But maybe you can get into a discussion by saying something like, and Carl, have you ever seen deals like this before? How did they turn out? What was your expectation? How did you react when these things happen? Um, when the cash flow projection blows up, are you going to be able to be there for me to help me with resources so I can fix the problem? Because maybe things are going to happen, Carl, that I can't control. How can we work together when these things happen? Or am I out on an island at that point, and I'm sinking? You know, if you engage people, they will engage back. And I think a big part of getting to a yes is not necessarily talking about the business itself, but all the things around the business that matter.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in the same way that every business is unique, every investor is unique, you have to create a bridge and interface so that you are engaged in the conversation. And this is one that will take place in multiple steps over days, weeks, months. So again, it's not an instantaneous ATM money withdrawal type of
Yeah.
action. It is building blocks, building relationship, demonstrating an interest and the capability of helping the investor attain their goal. And I almost like to come in when I'm pitching one of my projects by saying, "Here's how I think I can help," but this is kind of what I thought that our deal might look like. But I can change my deal to make it work better for you. And this is kind of what I had in mind. And what I've done is I've demonstrated I'm paying attention, I'm prepared, I'm working out something that can help them as an investor, but I'm also moving them from an investor mindset to an advisor mindset where they can coach me, as similar to what you mentioned earlier. If this is not a match, who would you recommend? And so they become an advisor in that capacity. Well, as an advisor, you will find that it's easier to get information to you than if you're simply talking the entire time. So, in some ways, your ability to place a question on the table that is something that shows common interest, acknowledge their capability, and so on. Now you're engaging, you're asking them to give you feedback, to talk to you, to move yourselves into kind of a peer-to-peer kind of a quality within your relationship where you're not pitching up to them or you're not talking down to them. It's point to point. And this kind of relationship is a demonstration of how you think you're going to work with this person over time. So it serves so many different outcomes, I think, to do what Eric is suggesting here, which is engage. Find something to talk about. You may have to take a slight detour, talk about their favorite hobby, their favorite charity,
Mhm.
some event that they're going to work on, because again, this is all part of a person's life. And you want to relate to them, to understand them, and for them to understand you, so that you are not viewed as a commodity. You are not viewed as just another investment opportunity. You're putting your personal imprint, your personal stamp on what you're trying to talk about.
Yeah. So one of the most famous interviews, pitches of all time was Bezos when he pitched the investors in New York as a very young man. And we all know Amazon now is this massive corporation. And it was very simple. And it was almost comical. But you're right, Carl. People have gone now into these institutionalized pitches that say how it's done. Well, when Jeff did his pitch, it was really, and it's on tape somewhere. I think you can still get it, but he head held kind of low, pretty sheepish. I'm not saying you should do that, but he was kind of sheepish. And he said, I got a good idea. I don't really know how to do it, but I think that the internet is going to be a great way to sell books. And he allowed the investors to come in and participate in how to make that happen. It was remarkable. And he had this idea, and then he allowed writers to come in and say, this is a great idea. So he had investors interested, he had writers. He didn't have anything about how it was going to make a dime. In fact, his big deal was, I want to see the writer who can't get published have an easy way to get their book to market because they have something valuable to say. What a cool pitch is that? And so if you can get to that point with somebody and keep it so simple, I think you're leaps and bounds to a yes.
Yeah, I sat through some pitches this morning for another program, and every these were practice pitches, and they allowed the entire audience to comment, question, challenge
Mhm.
how the pitches were made, and they only had 5 minutes, and so I want to distinguish between the initial pitch and getting to yes. You have to survive the initial pitch to get to the second meeting, but the initial pitch is a long ways away from the yes decision that you're looking for from the investor because they have to hear what you say first. They have to take interest, separate you from the rest of the crowd, but then they're gonna test you as a person. They're gonna test your company, look at your books and records. They're gonna look at your products. They're gonna want to talk to your potential customers. They're gonna look at this entire ecosphere that you're creating as you enter into a market, and they're gonna say, "Yeah, this makes sense to me." But somewhere along this path, as Eric was describing, it's no longer talking about the entrepreneur and the business and the investor as two separate entities. We're talking about how they are going to work together, and engaging them in this conversation of saying, "Here's what I think will benefit you. Here's how I see you can play. This may be of interest to you." You're doing your own due diligence in this conversation, series of conversations where you're trying to verify that they are the right match for you. And I have found by and large, investors don't take an affront. They don't feel bad that they're being interviewed or interrogated about what they're doing because they think that this is a reflection on your good business sense to find the right investor to make sure this is a good match. And in some ways it reflects positively on you, but you're also protecting the investor from getting into a bad deal. So when Eric says, you reach a point, you just don't see this happening, you make the statement, I don't see it's happening. Maybe we should take a different path here. Maybe you should refer me to someone else. I wouldn't say it that way, but um, the the point being is that this interaction demonstrates respect. It demonstrates a way for the person to trust you, your understanding of relationships. All these are soft skill components of making yourself attractive to an investor candidate and getting to yes. They're not going to judge you solely by the numbers. They may cut you loose. They may decide never to talk to you again. One of the presentations I saw this morning, they were going to go from 2,000 in revenue this year to 67 million in revenue in 4 years. And I was looking at this going, yeah, it might be possible. I don't know how, and they didn't explain how in their presentation. But there was enough in that initial presentation that they probably are going to get the second meeting. But if I go into the second meeting, I want to shift the focus from me to the investor and how we can work together. I want to start proving that I am somebody that's genuine, somebody who can work with them, somebody they can lean on, and they can have a reasonable reliance. I'm going to work hard with their money to help get them a return or to achieve whatever outcome I want from this investment, because it's not always about the money. It may be about impact, purpose, helping the community, helping somebody specific within the family or network of the investor. There's so many different ways that you can do this. And I typically have found that getting to yes is not about anything that's in the initial pitch.
So let me give you an example of what
Yeah,
you're talking
yeah.
about. So as you know, Carl, I do some charity work and things like that. And so there's a local school here in town, and they needed money for their computer department because money's tight in the schools. So I got together with some people and we invested in this school program. And our goals were very, and we got together with them. We had this conversation, and the students engaged with us. And this wasn't about us making money. This was about us doing the right. And this is what people don't get. Sometimes investors invest because it's the right thing to do for their community. And you touched on that a little bit. So we invested in their robotics club, their computer science program, and we invested quite large sums of money, quite frankly. But the goals we set for them and us and the teaching staff were very moderate. We wanted to see not necessarily test scores go up, but we wanted to see the program grow. Okay. We wanted to see them start doing competitions. Okay. Well, lo and behold, after 3 years, 4 years of investing in them, these kids go out and they win two different programming challenges, one with HP, one with Lockheed Martin. Then they go on and they back it up in another year by coming in second. And this is from a program that was zero. So, and on the robotics side, they went from not even being able to build a simple robot to now they're 3D printing parts for a robot. So I guess where I'm trying to go with this is even though you don't have a program that you need invested in that is going to make the investor a lot of money, think through maybe there's other benefits to the investor that you're not looking at because you don't always invest to get a return on your money, but maybe you're doing it get a return on the community. See what I'm saying? And people forget that part. It isn't always about I want a 10x return.
Yeah, no, as you can see behind me, I'm an advocate of my approach to raising capital, which deals with the motivations of the investor candidates. And it's my experience that every investor can get additional things beyond a rate of return on their investment, which may be to create jobs in a community, it may be to advance a social cause. There are major additional points that people can get. And if they can, they get two things or three things or four things, however you want to count them, out of the investment. And these may be the only things that they really use to separate you from every other investment opportunity that they're looking at. If I have two businesses and they both can generate a 25% rate of return per year, what's the difference? I could pick either one and satisfy my investment criteria. But if I know the investor and I know that they happen to support this local robotics club, I might ask the investors anything I can do to help you out. Like, could
Right.
I help support the same program you're supporting in the robotics club? And they go, yeah, that would be great. Well, at that point, the engagement, the conversation just shifted radically because now you're allies and working towards this common cause that's supporting something in the community that the investor cares about. And you are no longer viewed as somebody looking for money, but you're looking as an ally who can help them do something they want to do. And oh, by the way, yes, we think you have a reasonable chance of attaining that annualized rate of return that they're looking for, but that's secondary to this other thing that the investor candidate cares about. And if you don't know what they care about, if you haven't done your prep, you're never going to have this conversation unless it comes out in this long series of getting to know you kind of things. So, one of the other things I want to leave the audience with is that um, to get to this position of trust and common understanding and a potential perspective of being allies in reaching something, this may take a lot of time. It's not something where you meet for lunch and, oh, by the way, this is great, everything goes forward. Love at first sight, investment at first sight are both great themes for TV sitcoms and movies and so forth, but they really aren't matched in the real world altogether that much. The building of the relationship can take time. And if you start off with not knowing who the investor candidate is, you're going to have to go through a series of meetings. You're going to have to evolve a relationship, which may or may not result in an investment. But approached correctly, this still may be a valuable relationship to add to your assets of your business as an entrepreneur, even if they don't write the check, because they may be an open door to a new customer. They may be a customer themselves. They may sit in an advisory capacity, and you're getting value from the relationship, even when a check is not written, but that won't happen overnight. So we're coming up on the end of our hour, Eric, and I appreciate your being with us today. Is there any last thought or cherry on the icing on top of the cake that you would want to consider and getting to yes? What would you like to have the audience take home with them?
Yeah. Know exactly what you really want. Don't be wishy-washy about it. If and this goes back to Carl, what you were talking about. You want the money, but the money gets other things to happen. So know exactly what it is you want. Yes, I want $10,000 because the $10,000 is going to be able to buy this piece of equipment, and that's all part of your pitch. But so often, what you do is you say, "Well, if I give you this $10,000 or $1 million," and they give you their sources and uses of funds, and it's very abstract. It's not exact. And I'm not saying it has to be to the penny, but you have to know where this heads you and why it heads you there. I need a new 3D printer. Well, why do you need a new 3D printer? What's wrong with the one you have? Right? So that's really important because the person that's sitting across from you probably doesn't understand the why. He understands that you want money, but he doesn't understand the why. So you have to make sure you explain that really well.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I saw a pitch last week where 100% of the money was going into product development. And the guy says, "What do you think about my pitch?" And I said, "Well, if you're going to do is develop products, this is a very good pitch. If you're going to generate revenue, I would like to see some of this money allocated into sales and marketing." And he looked at me and he's like, "Good point." You know? So, uh, you do have to know where the money's gonna go. They want you to be able to explain this to some great detail, and the closer to when you're going to expend the money, the more detail we wanna see. "Well, what are you gonna do with my money next week?" Well, that needs to be precise because you should have already thought through this. Whereas if you're gonna get the money a year from now, you can be a little more vague, but still headed towards your mission, towards your goal. So this is all very good. Eric, thank you for being my guest this morning on the Successful Funding Show. I would like to point out to the audience that I do publish a daily newsletter on raising funding where I cover all kinds of topics, and it's free. It's online at LinkedIn, and you can subscribe on my profile. And once a week, I take everything I've written during the week and I bring it all together. And then I throw in a ton of more information on sources of funding, different thoughts here and there about funding, different tools that can help you out. And so my Sunday edition is my weekly edition where, like the New York Times, it may take you a long time to work your way through it, but there's a lot of good information and things there to help you out. So please subscribe to my newsletter, either the weekly or the daily edition, depending upon how often you need this kind of information. And come back next week to the Successful Funding Show. I'll have another guest, and funding will be our topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Eric, hold on.